Well, hi, everybody. Welcome back to UnAnchored Boston. This week's episode is brought to you, as always, by our good friends at Our Best Foods, featuring our best meatballs, available at your favorite local grocer. Yes. And Cold Springs RV, your destination for all things camping in Ware, New Hampshire, of course. Yeah. And the great George Gray at George Gray's Lexington Toyota. We've got a great guest here today. Maybe the last time Lobel and I ever speak during the next hour or so. But you're in charge, Lobie. Take it away and introduce our great guest.
He hates to hear that I'm in charge. I was never in charge. This is Upton Bell, former general manager of the New England Patriots, former co-host of Calling All Sports 254-5678 at the mighty, at the time, 38 states WBC. Boy, things have changed in a lot of ways. Not you, Upton. You would never change, but things have changed. There's a job opening here. It says on my phone, seriously, Director of Social Media and Content Strategy for Craft Sports and Entertainment.
I saw that.
You saw that. Have you applied yet?
Oh, yeah, count me in. Don't forget Robert Kraft, not Bob, as you and I knew
him. Right. Well, we all knew him, Bob, at one point, but things move on. Upton, it's great to see you. A lot to talk about. Certainly the Patriots are always front and foremost. And I guess what I really wanted to bring up, and I haven't talked to you about this, Lynchy, yet, but both of you, there was a Sports Illustrated article that came out. I don't know if you saw it. I've been trying to get it. Can't get it. I've seen it, seen the article online, but I can't get my hands on the article. I was going to hold it up. But it's all about sportscasters, local sportscasters, of which we're three of them, but two particularly on the Monday through Friday anchor desk, local sportscasters, about the article is The Death of Local Sports Anchors.
Yep.
That would include Lynch and I. So Upton you can give your opinion about local sportscasting. It's over, isn't it, as we once knew it?
Rest in peace. I never watch it. The minute I see it, I know I'm just going to get a few highlights. Hello, goodbye. I'm live here at live, or depending upon the host, dead at Boston Garden, and that's it. And as I said in my book, citing you and Lynchy and John Dennis and Butch Stearns and other people, but particularly you three, in saying you're the only reason that I got a second TV set, because I couldn't keep up. First of all, it went 5 or 6 minutes, which was absolutely great. And if it was on today, we could cut out a lot of the crap that we already know. But every night, one of you were breaking a story. In fact, I remember when Will McDonough and I ended up over at Channel 7, I used to say to Dennis, for Christ's sake, these guys are always beating you to the punch. Let's get something going.
I'm sure he loved that.
Well, I didn't, but who cares? So that's when he went to Will McDonough, Mr. Inside, and began to get scoops and say, well, we can compete with them. And so every night there was something.
So, Lynchy, do you believe that Upton's right? It's dead and buried, that we're done? It's obvious. I agree totally, Upton. I really agree with you.
I got a text message the other day that one of the stations in town, I won't mention, but this guy was just beside himself, that on that Saturday night sportscast did not mention that BU was going to the NCAA Frozen Four in hockey. They said they had a Celtics report. They didn't play, by the way, but they had a Celtics report, a Bruins report, a Patriots report, and a Red Sox report, and that was it.
Well, what station was it, Mike?
I'm not going to tell you.
Well, come on, do I have to guess will I get it right?
Well, you're looking at probably the guy who used to work there.
I was going to say Channel 5. I know it. I know all of this stuff. I now have 3 TV sets, so I can keep up to date with all of the stuff going on. But that's the thing, and it's really sad, because the people today who watch sports on TV, watch each one of the channels or whatever they choose, they're really missing something. The highlights, Alan Miller said, your producer, Bob, I said, why are you leaving WBZ? You've been there your whole lifetime. He said, because local sports is gone. He said, you can go on ESPN, you can go on anywhere and get this stuff. I can get it during the day. Why do I need to watch it at night? The reason I watch were, number one, the personalities, what they delivered, and also the other part of it is they did deliver. I said, oh my God, I missed a night, so I must have been missing some big scoop. What happened? Did Dave Gavitt leave Providence? I remember talking to you once, and I said to you, I think through a friend of mine I know, Dave Gavitt is going to leave Providence and go to the Celtics. I remember you saying to me, for Christ's sake, Upton, you should have told me earlier. I said, well, I had to be very, very careful. But that was the immediacy of it. I knew Lynch would have somebody. Dennis finally would get somebody because he knew you had to compete. If you didn't compete, that was it. They were the days when sports got more than the weather. I mean, the weather's going to be crappy. So who cares?
I would have to say, Upton, if Mike and I were doing it today, the pressure on us would not be to get stories. I mean, there always was a pressure to get stories, but it was sports and it was a semi-pressure. It was your own little world, and you guys deal with it, but don't get beat on any stories. But there was pressure there to get stories.
Yeah.
Not today. No,
Well,
because it all comes in pre-packaged, pre-taped, pre-everything.
Well, the other thing is, and I really want to hold people's feet to the fire, and I know it's impossible, but I'm going to take an example of Bill Belichick. I watched his put to sleep interview today from the NFL meetings, and I said to myself, if Lynch or Lobel or even Dennis or anybody years ago would let him get away with what he got away with today. And I know they tried, but letting him get through after 3 years of doing zip, one playoff game amid all sorts of controversy, and they let him get away at the end of the interview was saying, well, they said, well, what about the future? What about what's happened the last 3 years? You know what he said? I'll stand on my record the last 25 years. You would not let him get away with that bullshit.
He did say that. Did you see it? I didn't see it, Lynch.
I saw it.
I didn't see it.
Lynchy, oh my God.
I'll let my record stand in the last 25 years.
Yes. Yeah.
How about the last 3 years?
Said. And so I can remember some of the things, whether it was the Celtics having problems or the Red Sox or the Patriots, you guys, I can remember fights between people, saying that when they wouldn't answer, well, why won't you answer it? And you could get Rick Pitino with Larry Bird and Kevin McHale ain't walking through that door anymore. When's the last time you got a really good quote from any of these people? Or did they answer questions? Jaylen Brown, he never would have gotten away with what he's gotten away with in the past. You guys have been right on him. Well, what about Kanye West and his anti-Semitism? What about Kyrie Irving? Oh my God. I listen to these interviews and I say, okay, you don't have to be in attack mode, but your soft pedaling questions are just, the public wants to know, and all the outlets don't let them know.
That is Upton Bell, the great former general manager of the New England Patriots, very outspoken former host of Calling All Sports. Lynch, you had.
Don't you think that COVID is to blame for a lot of this when everything was sort of handed to us? Okay, you can't go in the locker room, you can't have any interaction with anybody. We're gonna tape interviews with the players and feed them to you, and then they were spoon fed from all the teams, softball questions and just handed to you, and it became the norm, and everyone became. I would say that there's not a lot of aggressive pursuit of stories because they were handed to them during COVID.
Is that true? Is that really what happened? Because I was not on during COVID. What happened, Mike? What was that like?
Well, I was part-time at the time, but I was still working there. I was doing high fives were done because you couldn't go into the high schools. the colleges, and then with the professional athletes, they would send their own camera in the locker room, and somebody that worked for the team would say, "Okay, what do you think about the Canadians tonight? You know, and what do you think about the Blackhawks?"
The team would send the camera and their cameras.
The team would have their own camera,
Yeah.
and their own person would ask them questions that they thought all the media would like to know. And so they interviewed Brad Marchand, introduced Patrice Bergeron, introduced Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, and they would spoon feed those heads, that sound, to the stations, so they have some content. But the content didn't have anything with any teeth in it. It was because they were just asking by a club employee.
I mean, you wouldn't ask Upton Bell, how do you like Billy Sullivan, and how's it work there?
Yeah, Mike, and you make a really good point, because here's what I think happened. One, the clubs then began to see, hey, maybe we can manipulate this. Maybe we can get that going, because maybe we've softened them all up to the point of when it is eventually open up, which it is, of course, now. But what I've seen is, and it's like everything else, I compare it to the Stockholm Syndrome. And that is, if after a while, eventually you begin to accept what your captors are saying to you, that you're really not oppressed. Now that's a version of, in some ways, what we see now. Because again, I check and listen. How many times do you really see anybody at the major channels? 4, 5, 7. I occasionally get it on Comcast when they're not in the Patriots' back pocket or the Celtics' back pocket. And I understand they do the games. But tell me the last time somebody really pressed somebody on it. Watching the Belichick thing today, nobody, they tried in every which way. But the questions were never confrontational. And and you guys know this because you've dealt with it.
The only guy that seems to step up to the plate is Mike Reese.
Huh?
Mike Reese might be the only guy that seems to step up to the plate. And
he does. But Belichick then tries to push him aside, ignore him. I can remember your interview with Haywood Sullivan. I remember calling you after and said, it's one of the great moments of my life, watching that. Now, I know later on you became kind of friends, but you confronted him about Yawkey, the Yawkey Trust, Buddy LaRue. I can remember that interview. And I said, I'm not going to get that today. I'm not talking about having to just...
I can remember sitting down with Bob Ryan and actually calling John Harrington on the air, the emperor that has no clothes.
Yeah, I mean,
that wouldn't happen today, would it, Michael?
No, absolutely not.
You can't. Well, even your interview with Bob Ryan, and Ryan, we love, all of us love him. I mean, he went crazy on the air, and you said, I'll give you a mulligan on that. He still didn't go for it. I said, I'm sorry what happened, but that's what we miss. The drama. Sports is big and always will be big here. But listening to these monotone questions, but that's in the end. Listen, as a general manager and an owner,
it's big, but there was a time when coverage of the sports was big. That time has come and gone. So it really is the sports themselves. It's sports in the phones, sports and cell phones. That's the perfect marriage. And you now, thank you. Welcome to the community. Right. Okay. Welcome. It says here, the new sign on the Turnpike of Massachusetts when you're coming in from either Rhode Island or Connecticut or New York or Maine or New Hampshire or whatever, welcome to Massachusetts, where you can now smoke, drink, and bet at your leisure.
Well, believe me, we might not believe to see it. Welcome to Massachusetts, all of the above, plus legalized prostitution. I mean, whenever they can make money, they're going to make money. But again, think of the pressure that was on you guys to compete. And not only that, when I said to myself, this is really great. you got a full 5 minutes or more, particularly if you had a good story. And
9. When I started, it was 9. We all had 9 minutes, like in 1981, 1982.
and think about it. Now, particularly, they should go back to it. And I'll tell you why. Again, all of the news that I watch, let's say on Channel 5, and I do watch a lot. I like Maria, and I like some of the people on there. But again, it's all retreads. ABC News follows with all the same stories.
Yeah.
If they were saying something new, yeah, we get the local, some poor guy falls off a skyscraper or something like that. But there's nothing that really keeps you going. But if you went on and let's say Mike Lynch was there and he has lined up an interview and he's pressing Jalen Brown. Well, wait a minute, Jalen. You said this, you said that. I'd be watching, but I'm not going to watch with fungo practice at Fenway South.
I know.
Pebble.
Yeah.
That's what we're getting. And yet, I knew this. When I first came to Boston with the Patriots, I remember Ernie Accorsi, who ended up going to the New York Giants as their general manager, great friend of mine. So I want to tell you one thing. The media there will hold your feet to the fire from day one. And they did. You know what? In spite of all my problems with Billy Sullivan, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed going back and forth. If I did something wrong, they were on me. If I did something right, they also were praising me. So I grew up in that atmosphere. I'm used to that. And I say now, who's having their feet held to the fire? Look at the Red Sox. John Henry, he might as well be Howard Hughes.
I know.
You can't get anything out. And you know why? Because they know nobody is going to press him. That's why.
How about, okay, so many
Hey,
questions.
hey, Bob, hold that thought for 1 second because you know what? I'm getting a little hungry and I might be going grocery shopping after this show. So if you go grocery shopping, don't forget to go to the frozen food section and look for a bag of our best meatballs.
You buy this.
Look for the Smiling Chef. Bob's got them right on the package right there. There is with the Smiling Chef, Lobel. You'll find great tasting meatballs for your next dinner or hot snack. Remember, our best meatballs come in the resealable bag, Bob, right? No, don't do it upside down.
Open. I resealed it. Now I don't know how to open it.
It makes it easy for you to store away before your next meal. And don't forget to download the money-saving coupon available online at ourbestfoods.com and look for the Smiling Chef and Our Best Foods and Our Best Meatballs.
I love meatballs. I
Good.
love them.
I'm sure yours will be in the mail tomorrow.
I've known a lot of meatballs, but I love them.
Good. Yes, I know you have. Upton, that's good, Mike. That was a good job you did there.
I like it.
We can do next week's too. He's the first commissioner of the National Football League. So we're talking
What would your dad say, Upton, about legalized gambling in the National Football League?
Good one.
Let me tell you a story I don't think I've ever told before. I always like to give you guys exclusives.
All right.
There have been different things talked about. 1946, night before the championship, Bears, the monsters of the Midway versus the New York Giants. My father is at home getting ready to take the train to New York to be there tomorrow for the championship game. He gets a call. And one thing I was telling Bob, Mike, that in my house, there were like 4 or 5 phones. And I mean, it was, I heard every conversation my father had as a child, all the way to the end of his life, because he talked very loud. He talked through dinner. He talked everything. There was a phone everywhere. And I always claimed when he was buried, he should have been buried with the phone. The call comes in, District Attorney Frank Hogan's office. We need Mr. Bell to come to New York. There have been 2 bribes offered to the starting quarterback, Frank Filchok, and his leading running back, Merrill Hapes. They did not report the bribes. We got a problem. So he gets on the train, he goes to New York, and they spend all night long. And remember then, college football was king, pro football was barely hanging on, and something like this could have absolutely killed the league. So he decided, like at 2 o'clock in the morning, he would suspend Merrill Hapes for life. He would let Frank Filchuk, the quarterback of the Giants, play in the game, but then afterwards suspended him also for life. If he had not stepped in at that moment, the headlines, I mean, would have even been worse. And I think that would have been the end of football because there were gamblers all over the place. Remember, you had the Black Sox scandal back in 1919, 1920. And so he put a stop to it right away. Now, what he did follow it with was he called Davey O'Brien, his former quarterback at the Eagles, who won the Heisman Trophy, who quit early. He had left to go to the FBI. He at one time the greatest pistol shot in America. He asked him to talk to J. Edgar Hoover that what he would like to do was hire ex-FBI men in every city in the NFL to essentially follow the players and check out all gambling things. Hoover told him, go ahead, give him the names, which he did. He hired guys, FBI guys, ex ones in every city. He also, which is still around today, he instructed every league team, at that time there were 12, that by Thursday each week, they had to report publicly on who, not only waivers, but they had to report the injuries to any type of player, whatever the injury was.
That's where that started.
That's where it started with Burt Bell. And so then he made sure he got it to the newspapers. The other thing that he did is there was a red phone in our house that my father always said, when that rang, Upton, never pick it up. And on that red phone were gamblers. I'm going to give you the names. You'll love this. Hockey, Wingy, and Frisco Legs. They were the bookies that would call him right after Sunday's games and report the odds all the way up to game time of the following week. That he kept up with everything. And if he saw any fluctuation one way or another, I was telling Bob Mike the other night, I remember one time it was Sunday morning and he saw, it might have been the Bears, that the point spread had really changed. He called right in the locker room and said, give me goddamn, whether it was Hallis, whoever the coach was. And he said, I want to know, he said, the point spread has changed. Did you put everything on your list? And he said, the coach said, well, somebody had the flu. He said, I don't give a damn whether they had a flu or not. Should have been on the list. But that little thing then, which is not as big maybe today, changed the whole odds on the game. And so that's what happened. So every week till the last day he was alive, he would get those reports. I think he, like me, would be totally against what's happened today. And as I told Dan Shaughnessy this week, I think the game's better. I don't live in the past. The game is better. I like the rules change. I like everything about it. I like the TV. But what I don't like is now you're putting in the hands, and particularly I have grandchildren, you guys do. I checked my grandchildren last week. They've been betting since 15. And they said, now I can get it on the cell phone. In fact, this morning on Comcast Sports with Bertrand and Patriots houseman Zolak is complaining. Now, here's a guy that does the Patriots color commentary, is on a radio show. He's complaining because he was losing money on the NCAA this weekend because he could do it on his cell phone. And I'm saying, and then the cynicism of underneath it says, if you got a gambling problem, contact so. Jesus Christ, please give me a break.
Yeah,
Bet
well,
responsibly.
Kraft owned a piece of DraftKings.
And Jerry Jones, the cynicism of the leagues, that's fine. If the Supreme Court passes it and the states pass it, and of course, the only reason they pass everything is to make money. They don't love the game. They could care less.
Mike, isn't it interesting? Upton, last week we had Jan Volk on, and he talked about, Mike asked him the same question about how would Red feel about the gambling status today. And, obviously Red and Bert Bell were contemporary. They pretty much felt the same thing, as would anybody back in that day, as would any baseball commissioner back in that day. But things, obviously, they've caved into the dollar.
Bob, as a friend of mine said years ago, George Young, the general manager of the Giants, who actually at one time worked for me, he said, when they say it's not about the money, it's about the money. So somewhere along the line, is there not some integrity? Is there not something that you sell out for? I mean, the NFL could have just said, oh, okay, but we're not going to get in bed with gambling. I mean, the NFL Network, it is unbelievable. They go on and they talk about the odds of the game, and then afterwards they'll say, of course, if you've got a gambling problem, well, who the hell doesn't? But the thing I'm seeing now is
Uppy, the media has been able to replace beers and cars with the gambling money. It's like found treasure. So the pressure on to get beers and cars has always been great, because that's what drives the machine. Cigarettes don't advertise anymore. So obviously gambling and alcohol have become staples.
just remember, prostitution isn't far away if it's a moneymaker. So what has happened again is I'll turn on NBC Sports Boston, whatever they call it, titles and God, and you'll see the morning show with Bertrand and Zolak, and you'll see right behind them BetMGM, and you'll see on Celtics telecast, as Shaughnessy talked this week about it, and you've got Scal. Oh my God, don't get me started on him. You got Scal on there talking about in between plays. Well, if you bet so and so, and I'm saying, when will this all end? It's going to get worse. And
We both know when it'll at least take a pause, and that will be the first scandal comes down in the NBA, which it's inevitable.
Bob and Mike, there already has been one. That idiot for the Atlanta Falcons that walked right in to the gambling place and placed when the league rule says you can't gamble, the NFL walks right into the gambling place in Miami and places his bet. So then they suspend him for a year. Now he's back with Jacksonville. Here's the thing that I pointed out that I know about is you've got a friend, you've got an uncle, you play for the Patriots, you're an offensive guard, and you say, listen, can you place a bet for me? Nobody will know, period. And all it takes, Lynchy, one or two, you miss your block. I mean, people miss their blocks all the time. Guy throws an incomplete pass. In this case, we might never know what happens in a game because it's too easy, particularly in football or basketball. That's another thing quickly, and then you can move on. I'm playing for LaSalle. It's 1967. And on the team was a guy by the name of Eddie Bowler, pretty good player. So I remember each time
Excuse me.
this guy would run out of the stands and start berating him. And I remember saying to him one day, Eddie, what is that? He said, oh, it's my father. He's always angry at me. He said, I have to put up with it. 1 year later, in the gambling scandal that year that included St. Joe's players and players all over the country. We found out that guy wasn't his father. He was a gambler for berating him for making too many baskets. So I'm too easy, and it's kind of sad.
Hey, you know what? The camping season is right around the corner, guys. Right around the corner.
Upton, you ever go camping?
Look at this. Of course I did.
I can't see it, Upton. You lifted his top shirt. What was it? What did you say?
This is the abs that I got from Canada.
I wish I had
That I did, but I hated it.
hair there.
But anyway,
Well, if you're thinking about a new motorhome
Thank
or
you,
a
Mike.
pop-up camper, go visit our friends at Cold Springs RV in where? Where, New Hampshire, of course. That's where. At Cold Springs RV, you'll find a huge selection of our latest in new and used and pre-owned campers for you to choose from. If you want to check out the great deals for today, simply go to coldspringsrv.com. That's coldspringsrv.com. We're going to have a Lobel cruiser up there one of these days, like the Madden cruiser. We're going to have a Lobel cruiser. All right, let me ask you this question about gambling. I think that the pro athletes make so much money they would never risk anything, but it's the college kids I'm worried about. That they've gotten to college kids in the past, CCNY, B, C, to name two. I don't fear any professional athlete being bribed or listening to anybody, but I do fear the college athlete.
well, you already had it at BC, their basketball team.
Rick Hume.
But let me just disagree with you slightly, Mike. And I'll tell you why. 1946, my first trip to a pro football camp, other than my father's when he owned the Eagles. And 1946, the average life of an NFL player was 3.5 years.
Yep.
Now, in 2000 plus 2023, it's never changed. It is still 3.5 with all the things that they put in to change the game, make it safer, and everything else like that. Also, if you look at the bottom athletes, they're not making the millions of dollars. There are a lot of athletes still in the NFL that are not. And I claim it is a big danger there, but I agree with you in colleges, it's even bigger. I played with one, as I told you guys. The other thing I really don't like about it, and it's interesting last night, I don't know whether you guys saw it or not, replay it if you can. Charles Barkley on 60 Minutes, who I interviewed years ago, Bob, for you, when there was a question about he was married to a white wife, and I went down to Philadelphia to talk to him about it, and he's one of the few players that discuss the whole thing. I love the guy. I love everything that he does, even when he gets in hot water. And he was asked, what is the one thing you don't like about it? Just what you said. He said, I don't like two things. He said, the first thing is, I don't like the idea of these guys being able to jump from one team to another. To me, the NCAA is now totally professional sports. The other thing that he talked about is the dangers of those players being able to gamble, being able to now, if you want to, let's say if Harvard wanted to, which they don't, if Harvard wants to now have to recruit the best players in the country, they are going to have to get their alumni to put up big bucks. It's no different than the pro game. So you're right. They're open to everything now. They don't finish school if they're the best, particularly in basketball. They can jump from one place to another. There is no loyalty at all. They're getting paid off by everybody under the sun. And now they can gamble like mad. So I agree. There's no difference. That's the shame of it. There's not the difference between the pro game and the college game.
Well, Mike, I'm sure I got a list of things that I want to ask Upton and you both about. And that includes the story about the Red Sox trying to trademark the word Boston, claiming that it was, you saw the story, right? Both of you?
Yeah.
I mean, it's so outrageous. I don't even know if the Globe had the courage to print it. I know the Herald did, but the Sox were trying to trademark the word Boston. But they
Why? What's the upside for them in that?
Well, they claim it was a Major League Baseball project, that the Red Sox were one of 3 teams that they tried to get trademarked, the names Houston, Seattle, and Boston. Why? Why do people get trademarks? I don't know. Boston Beer Works. You think it would be an infringement? I mean, it's so ridiculous. You can't even comprehend what that would be like. Then you'll trademark the United States of America, and then you'll have to use it.
They can jump on anything and claim, let's say, if your meatballs wanted to use Boston, get your Boston meatballs, you can hit a home run, for instance. They can step in and stop that. If they had that, they'd say, wait a minute, that's an infringement upon our rights. Pay me. I mean, that's one of the things. I think it's one of the bigger ripoffs, and they hide behind Major League Baseball.
I know, it's really amazing that they have really outdone themselves in distancing themselves from Major League Baseball.
I think that brings up even a bigger point, is that John Henry came riding in here with Larry Lucchino and really a group of people, Theo Epstein, who I still believe when they lost Theo Epstein, they lost everything, even though they won a few more championships. And basically, I could see it because I've been around new owners that come in and they want to do the job and let's end the curse and everything else like that. After 4, it's all business now, boys. It's all how can we cut the payroll? It's no longer important. You got bigger and bigger. Then, they got a soccer team. They've got all these things. They've got LeBron James. It's no longer what you think about the Red Sox. And maybe that's true about all business now. But to me, I try my best to pay no attention to that.
Upton, why should they care about that day-to-day bottom line with a plus next to it when they are still like one of the top 10 most valuable sports franchises in the world, including professional soccer, including professional football, and including professional baseball and basketball? All these things are factored in, and the Red Sox are one of the most valuable in the top 10 most valuable of all. Why should they care about, as much as the fans do, viscerally care about the day-to-day product on the field when the product on the field has no impact on the bottom line? You think it would have a direct impact, but it's having less and less because they have Fenway Park.
I think slowly but surely that's changing. I think you're going to see less and less people going to the games each year. I never knew a millionaire, and I was around a lot of them, particularly growing up. I never knew a millionaire that didn't want to keep making more and more and more money. And if they might want to be sportsmen, although I think that's dead too. That people that I grew up with that own professional football teams, they really first and foremost, they're fans, but they're also football people. They do the business. But I think in all of that, I grew up around, I knew a lot of the baseball owners. I knew a lot of the basketball owners. I used to sit on the bench with Eddie Gottlieb with the old Warriors. They were different cats. Today you have people, look at the National Football League, the most successful next to soccer in the world business. Very few, if any, have no real relation to the game. They're in it. It's a business. And it always to a degree has been a business, but now you try to talk to any of them really about football, they'll send you to somebody else. They are about the money. No problem, but don't tell me it's a sport. It's a business, and it's become bigger and bigger business. Daniel Snyder is going to get, here's a guy that did everything wrong about the game in all sorts of trouble. This guy's going to get near $6 billion for doing one of the worst jobs in the history of pro football. It's all about the money. So why should John Henry care now? He's gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. The only reason he might start caring, which Bob Kraft evidently has started to do with Belichick, hopefully, that when he sees less and less going to that shrine that they keep calling Fenway Park as it falls down around itself, is that what he's going to find one day is wake up with this bargain basement crap they're doing with Hein Bloom, and see that people don't any longer love it. I mean, when I first came here, the Red Sox were number one. The Celtics kept winning. The Bruins won, but the Red Sox, even if they were lousy, they were in people's hearts. I don't think so anymore. I don't think people care.
Well, I don't think it matters who the Red Sox are playing. Could be playing the Bad News Bears on May 1st, and they're still going to get 35,000 people come to the ballpark because it's a destination point. It's a tourist attraction. That's what it is. They don't care about the game. They don't care about what's happening. They just want to be at Fenway Park, buy some hats, buy some popcorn, take a lot of pictures, and tell everybody they were at Fenway.
But Mike, I do agree with that. They're not any longer coming for baseball. They're coming to be entertained. But on the other hand, if they keep doing what they've done the last 3 or 4 years, their television ratings have been down, which lures people in, and their crowds are getting less and less. It's a slow. If they don't stop it and change what they're doing, which I don't believe they will, by the way, it will be a slow move to less and less and less. When you think about the top teams and stories in New England, what do you think about now? First,
Patriots.
you think about the Patriots, even with all their problems, because everybody's interested in, what's Belichick going to do? Will he ever win without Brady? 2, the Celtics. 3, the Bruins, and if the Bruins win this year, they'll be more popular. When is the last time you guys, who covered it for years, the Red Sox? When was the last time the Red Sox were dead ass last?
So, by the way, I'm going to remind you that Thursday's opening day.
Really? Well,
Yeah.
I'll arrange that day to take a nap.
Well, I'm just. But I remember when opening day was an event to be looked for and planned for.
State holiday.
Well, opening day 1971, we were in the basement of left field at a bowling alley. That's where the offices were. I remember the first time walking in right after my press conference and say, "Oh my God, what did I get myself into?" My assistant general manager who I hired, actually, his office was in the men's room. But on opening day, the baseballs hit the left field. I could look at the top of my office and see the baseballs. They'd come through like the woodwork. They were in this netting at the top. I said, Jesus Christ, I can't believe this. But that's what it was. They were it. And I understand ratings change, businesses change, sports change. But in this case, we are watching, unless something really happens, we are watching the death knell of the Red Sox.
Do you think that coincides with the lack of popularity of baseball? Now, save for the 3 great rule changes this year, which should improve the game, but the way it's going and the young people not watching it, do you think that coincides with what's happening with the game, or is it indigenous to the Red Sox?
Both, Mike. Both. I think I can remember, because when my father was owner of the Eagles, but also commissioner, I can remember sitting in the dugout as a kid with Connie Mack. I'd sit in the pregame. Matt, you could get near anything today. Sitting there, he's the last guy, never wore uniform, shirt, tie, like a topper hat, everything, and watch him, give signals to the outfielders and the infielders and stuff like that, and what the game really was. I mean, The games then started at 8 o'clock, the Athletics and the Phillies at Shibe Park, and the games were over before 10. And you got a lot of people that will go. I think you're right. What's happened now, the young people want action, and they're not getting action. And they might have pulled themselves back off the precipice with now we're going to get shorter games.
Yeah.
I also wonder, is it almost too late? Have you already lost the young, what the young people, because I talk to my grandkids all the time, as I'm sure you guys do, they don't care about baseball. They they might want to play it or something like that. But when I ask them all the time, what do you like? Love hockey, action. Love football, action. Basketball, action. What about baseball?
What about Belichick?
What about them?
Yeah, well, I just said a couple things, Mike. Mike, what was that? Fishing line or what?
Oh, that was a lacrosse stick.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if you were going. If you're giving me a signal. Let's get out of here. Fishing.
By the way,
No, I was going to ask you about Belichick and his future because it just kind of seems it's over, Bill. I mean, it's like, thank you for a job well done, and you'll get all the accolades you're going to get and all the Hall of Fame stuff. So what if you don't pass Shula? You know what? It's over.
if you watch his press conference today,
I watched a little bit on ESPN as we're on our.
Let me ask, did he have a glass of orange juice with him?
pre interview, yeah.
Okay. All right.
No, yeah, he did. And here's when people ask me way before all this trouble started, who would you pick? Which I did my book. Who would you pick as the greatest coaches of all time? And when I hear people say here, Belichick is the greatest coach of all time, and it was funny. I was watching an interview of Mike and Bob about 5-6 years ago. I think it was Mark Bertrand and whoever it was. It was on the night show. And he said, Belichick is the greatest coach of all time. And so I think Ron Borges was on the show and he said, Did you see Belichick play? Our coach? And he said, oh no. And the whole thing of throwing out that he is the greatest coach of all time and Brady is the greatest quarterback of all time. And so I said the greatest coach of all time, and I can prove it, is Paul Brown. He changed the game. There's still many things that people use in it today. 10 straight years with every type of player. He went to the championship game. Before you had everybody and their mother making the playoffs.
Belichick may agree with you, Upton.
Yeah, well, I know that he.
His dad.
About him.
Yeah, his dad. Yeah.
Forget Shula and going for the record. He's number one. Number two, I put Lombardi because Lombardi won 5 out of the 7 years and beat us in many of the championship or playoff games. I pick him number two. Number 3 and 4 are Bill Walsh, who changed the whole game. See, to me, the great coaches with the victories are the innovators. And look at this. Walsh made the pass the key weapon, the short pass with Montana instead of the run. He really helped change the game. Then you got Noel, who I would pick in there because he changed he took 30, 40 years of losing and changed it all around and made defense. Really, he was kind of the forerunner of that thing. Then I would bring in Shula, and the reason is I know everybody hates him around here, and I learned with him and came up through him, saw him. Remember, even though he didn't win a Super Bowl after 1973, but he also won in a time where there weren't so many playoffs. But he won with the Unitas. He won with Greasy, but a lot of people forget, unlike Belichick yet, he took a guy to the Super Bowl and almost beat the Redskins, a quarterback nobody ever heard of. And the quarterback never did anything after that. I think that he was a very brilliant coach, but people will never forget he lost to the Jets when I was there in 1968. The other guy that I would pick over Belichick is the guy who won 3 Super Bowls with 3 different quarterbacks, and none of them ever turned out to be really great quarterbacks, and that's Joe Gibbs.
Yeah.
So nobody around here is willing to consider anybody else because it's easy to go on a show and say, Belichick, greatest of all time. Brady, greatest of all time. Now, in the case of Brady, I would take Brady and Unitas in their different eras and say, they're the 2 greatest quarterbacks I've ever seen. Not because they could scramble, not because they were the greatest in the shotgun, none of that. They had the ability to take teams that weren't maybe so great, they were good, and project them on to winning championships, but not only that, being good every year. They were the best that I have ever seen. Would I pick one over the other? I probably lean a little bit more towards Brady because it was longer. In those days, Brady wouldn't have lasted. In today's game, Unitas would because of the injury situation.
Yeah.
So I look at, but I think people are too careless in saying and repeating, oh my God, Belichick's the greatest of all time. But I'll also remind you this, the greatest of all time, Paul Brown, was essentially fired after I think 3 or 4 years because he was no longer winning. And in this case, with Belichick, if I were Kraft, last year after that disgrace, no other coach ever brought in 2 buddies that never had coached the position before and got away with going a full season and throwing it totally away. So if I were the owner last year and he came and said, this is what we're doing, I'd say, that's good. That's what you want. I don't agree. This is not a good thing, but I want to remind you, if it turns out a disaster, you're gone.
You know, you made Lobel disappear. You know that? See that?
I've done that before. Where are you, Bob?
Bob, you down there? Bob, you down there somewhere? Maybe he fell on the floor. Hey, this will give me a chance to get a little plug in for our good friend George Gray, and maybe he can
Good
pick
guy.
Bob up if Bob's out in the street. If you're thinking about a new vehicle, go where we go. We've been going there for years. Go see our friend George Gray at George Gray's Lexington Toyota. We've been customers for years because we know George Gray is going to treat you right. They're a family-owned and operated dealership that we trust and you can trust as well. Go see the great George Gray at Lexington Toyota, and he's probably out right now picking Lobel up and bringing him back to the show somewhere. Lobel's probably looking for a free ride someplace, but he's supposed to be popping back with us up in a second right here. Will we ever see a team? Will we ever see a dynasty again? You know, we've had dynasties. We've had the Niners. We've had the Patriots. We've had the Steelers. We've had the Dolphins. We've had the Packers. Which have blah 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 blah. But are we going to see a team win 3 or 4 world championships?
No.
Not Canton. You don't think Kansas City's on the edge of it?
No.
Really?
Let me put it this way: it has nothing to do with Kansas City and in my opinion, the greatest quarterback right now, Patrick Mahomes. But the way that not only free agency, but a lot of other things that are taking place in the NFL, really the whole idea goes all the way back again. I hate to keep repeating it to my father, who coined the phrase, on any given Sunday, any team can beat any other team. And the way he did it back in the early 50s is he would sit at home with this big chessboard, and he would move all the different teams around till he got it to the point where in the beginning through the first 6 games, all the strong teams would play all the strong teams, and all the weak teams would play all the weak teams. And as a result, by mid-season, everybody was in the race.
Yeah.
That was the early part of it. Then Pete Rozelle took it to even a farther point of where he essentially set it up where everybody was kind of equal. You weren't going to see the Cleveland Browns or the Green Bay Packers or the Raiders or some of the teams of the early areas. Pete wanted to, along with expanding to 32 teams, which I think are way too many, but set it up as the game that way. Then added free agency, where guys are not totally free like baseball or basketball. It's limited free agency, the way it is. That basically what you have now is, and add the injury factor, and also Mike, which I think again is another subject. 17 games are way too many, and the injuries are just horrific. What's going on, and playing on Sunday, Monday, Thursday, then Saturday later in the season is just really bad for the players. Not that the owners care about that, but I think it's impossible almost now to find a run. You'll never see a run like the Patriots again. But I also remind you, which might make some of your argument, is you're never going to see Tom Brady again either.
Yeah.
You're not. He had probably the highest intelligence, football intelligence of any player I've seen outside of Unitas, and you can't teach that.
Yeah.
You really can't teach it. So Mahomes has a lot of it, but Mahomes is based more on great physical ability, the way, and he not only can scramble, but the other thing I like about him is what he did against the Eagles. He was badly injured.
Yeah.
And I said to myself, boy, how many times did I see Unitas take some of the worst beatings I've ever seen and get up? And one time he was bleeding and I mean really badly hurt. And the official said to Unitas, Mr. Unitas, we can give you a few more seconds. And he said, shut the F up and blow the whistle. And I'm going out on the sideline. They're going like, holy shit, what is this? But Brady was so unique. And that's why I say I have great doubts, even if Belichick was in his 40s, that he can win again like that. Because you're not going to get a quarterback like Brady that ever again. So, again, it's really hard to say that you can say to yourself, maybe Kansas City maybe wins 3 over a period of time, but it's not that every year that you're going to see that. And again, look what's happened. You've got Buffalo there. I mean, this division now went from the tomato can division to everybody having a shot. And if Rodgers coming out of darkness, if Rodgers goes to the Jets, I think the Jets are the best team in the division.
They're close. I still like Buffalo, but
I do too. But the Jets have younger players in good positions to make that move. I like, well, I think there are too many good teams out there now. You got Cincinnati, you got Buffalo, maybe the Jets, maybe Miami, you got Kansas City. You have teams that are all in there. And when you have that many good teams, barring injury, of course, then basically it's hard to have a dynasty. Remember here, the Patriots are almost guaranteed every year because of stiffs that they played number 1 in their own division. Because of that, automatically they were in the first playoff game, or they only had to play 2 games or 1 game to get there.
Yeah.
Not anymore. Are you going to see that? Because most of the divisions are too tough. Let's see what happens with the West too. That can all change. with different ownership and a different coach showing out there in Denver. So too many things mitigate against it. What do you think? You're an ex-football player.
I think right now that Kansas City is the team to beat. But it's free agency changes everything. It is Lobel. He's back. We found him.
Ask Mike if he had fear like all the TV people have of people flipping you the bird or giving the big FU behind you while you're on. How to counteract that?
Well, throwing things when you're at City Hall at a Patriots parade or something, you're sitting on top of the truck. You're a perfect target. Cans are flying at you, bottles are flying at you. That's that was pretty wild.
Well, yeah. How about because McDonough and I were there when we were at Channel 7 doing the Will and Upton thing, going back and forth. I remember going to City Hall when and Bob, you had covered that when the first Bird Championship, they beat Houston. And remember he had the run-in with Moses, and he's coming back. There are thousands of people at City Hall. You're going to get an athlete to stand up today and say, and guess what? Moses eats shit. Everybody's going crazy. Can we?
Well, I guess Boston heroes are defined by foul language in public, whether it's Larry Bird or David Ortiz. I mean, if you pass the test, you're in.
But you know what? You missed them. You're not going to. People are now very careful, very polished, and again, they know they can manipulate. How about when Shaughnessy would walk in the locker room, Ortiz would be screaming at him the minute he walked in there. That's, again, can't get it back. But I think one thing that your show can do is show what it was like and what it could have been. And that's the way it is. It's called showbiz.
It is. That's exactly what it's called. So what did you think, Belichick? I missed that whole conversation. Just a quick recap. Is he going to stay with the Patriots until he passes Shula, or is he going to check out early? Whether Kraft
he'll never check out. And I will remind your audience that the greatest coach, in my opinion, of all time, Paul Brown, 3 or 4 years after he continued to lose or not quite make the championship game, the greatest coach in history was fired. And there's no reason why, if Belichick doesn't produce this year after that disaster. I can't remember, by the way, any coach in history that wanted to continue to win would bring in two cronies that every player and everybody told them could not do the job. Joe Judge, and he was brought in, and that's another problem I have here too, is because I remember having this conversation one day with John Shula about signing players to contracts. I was the personnel director and we had a general manager, and we did the signing of the contracts. And he said to me one day, he said, you know what? I never want to be in a position of signing or having to negotiate or getting angry at a player in contract negotiations. He said the coach should be separate from the general manager. And if I pick one thing that has been really bad here, put aside what's happened lately, is Kraft turning around, I don't know whether to save money or not, and by making Belichick the general manager as well as the football coach. What you do, number one, is you end up, as we saw all the people here, by pissing your players off, because they know that they're not only being judged on what they do on the field, but this guy's in charge of my contract. Never should have happened. And look at all the players that left here. Look at all the players that were bitter over a period of time. And the only thing that offset it was they continued to win, but they also had Brady. So I never would have had Belichick, and I think it's still a big mistake to have him do it. The second thing is, as far as those two coaches are concerned, I can't think of, I'm going back 60 years to think about even the smaller coaching staffs where a coach brought in two guys totally incapable of running an offense with a rookie, essentially a second-year player, and getting away with it. Because I will tell you this, I think many of the owners in the past would have said, okay, you're going to do this, but if it fails, you go with it. That's what I would have told them. And in my case, I just think now it's going to go on and on and on. But will you return to glory? I don't think so.
Speaking of on and on and on, we've been going on and on for almost an hour and a half here. So
That's
unless
great.
we have the
I can do 6 hours.
Yeah, but we're not the same guys as we once were.
Oh, Upton, you were great as always.
Upton,
Thanks so much.
I'm sorry I messed up the middle by dropping out and going.
We couldn't find. We kept looking for you down there. We couldn't find it. We thought you slipped.
You know what? I knew I was coming back. I just forgot to tell you.
All I can say is it only happens every 3 or 4 years. But it's great to have you guys on my show. Thank you.
All right, Upton.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
For Upton, for Lobel, I'm Lynchy. That's UnAnchored Boston. We'll see you. Bye-bye.